On the 14th of September 1992, a gorgeous baby girl was born to Maria and George Jones. Her name was Holly. She was the youngest of 4. She had 2 older sisters and an older brother, Natasha, Shauna and James. And being the baby of the family, which I'm also the baby, the youngest of 4, I don't know, it's a special kind of relationship you have with your older siblings. Again, I had 2 older sisters and an older brother, and yeah, Holly was just worshipped. They absolutely loved her. She went to St. Luigi's Catholic Elementary School in the Junction Triangle area of Toronto, Canada. At school, she was a popular little girl, and like a lot of girls, she loved to sing and dance and just talk to her little friends and play. And she really loved music. One Halloween, her mum said she dressed up as a rock star, and when she was older she used to say she wanted to be in a band, and she'd already picked out the name of the band, the Evil Angels. Now, Holly just seems like an amazing little kid. Not only was she hell-bent on being in a rock group, and she loved playing with her little friends, she was also really into basketball and cross-country running. She loved it. She just loved getting involved. Sadly, on the 12th of May 2003, all of Holly's dreams were just stamped out by a freak. Holly was 10. On that day, after school, Holly brought a little friend to her house to play. After a while, Holly went to her mum and said, "Mum, I'm gonna walk my friend home." Holly's mum, Maria, was like, "Well, why is that your job?" And Holly seemed so independent. You know, she said with a little bit of attitude, "Mum, I've got to, she's only in grade 4. And Holly's mum just looked at her and didn't want to embarrass her in front of her friend, didn't want to have to stop her fulfilling this promise that she had made. And against her better judgment, she allowed Holly to walk her little friend home. Now, in some documentaries, they say that Holly's friend's house was a short distance away, but then in other documentaries, you know, they do a map and it's like a 20-minute walk. But it was the same route Holly took to school every day. So about 6 p.m-ish, Holly and her friend are seen by a witness, halfway between Holly's house and her friend's house, somewhere in the middle. And we know that Holly got a friend to the house because a friend's mum offers to walk Holly home. So by this time it's after 6 p.m. But again, Holly insists, no, she's fine, she knows the way, she'll be okay. So a friend's mum watches until Holly is out of sight and then goes about doing whatever. In one of the documentaries around this point, I think it's one of the detectives who makes the arrest who's on the case, and he says that Holly was street proof. Hearing that coming from a detective, even back then, is worrying. A 10-year-old little girl is not proofed against anything when it comes to an adult. She was a little girl. So that really pissed me off. So then it gets to about 8 p.m. and Holly's mum had been out. And she came home and it was about 8, and Holly's mum, Maria, says to James, her older brother, where's Holly? And James says, oh, she hasn't came back yet. So Maria phones George, who is over the road at his friend's house, and says, is Holly with you? Have you seen her? He says no. So Maria and George decide to go on the street and retrace the route to and from Holly's friend's house. But there's no sign of her. So then it starts to get dark, and then Maria is terrified because Holly is scared of the dark. There's no way she'd be out playing with her friends or doing whatever at night. It wouldn't happen. So about 9:15 p.m. they call the police and say our little girl's missing. A level 3 search was conducted, and in the 12 hours between 9 p.m. and 9 a.m. The police had contacted the media and also been conducting some interviews. So it's the next morning, May 13th, and the very first Amber Alert in Canada is issued, and it goes on like road signs and across radio stations, and the media are already, you know, saying the little girl's missing, she's lost. That same morning, Maria does a press conference, and it is heart-wrenching. She is begging the person who has Holly to please let her go, and that she's never done anything to anyone. And she's also talking to Holly, saying, we're gonna find you, we're gonna get you home. Now, even though the police have issued this Amber Alert, they're convinced that she's gone missing within Sterling Street and Perth Avenue, which is still in the Junction Triangle area. They're convinced that she's gone missing along this route, coming home from her friends. Now, shortly after the press conference, where Maria is just broken, Toronto Naval Support get a phone call because a resident of a lake on Ward Island, he's found a black gym bag floating, and he opens it. Unfortunately, it contains Holly's torso. The police then rush to Holly's home, and they get George, Maria and James and take them to the police station. So the dive team back at the lake found another bag. In this bag they found Holly's head and arms. Maria and George and James are told that Holly's body is being found. I'm not sure at this point if they've been told she is not in one piece. But Maria is begging the detective, please tell me, has she been raped? You've got to tell me, I need to know. And the detective just nods his head and says, we believe so, yes. So then this changed the case. The police were no longer looking for a missing 10-year-old girl. Now they were looking for the killer. So the first thing the police think of is they think we're looking for some sort of sexual predator. So, you know, they go on the website and they look at the sex offenders register for that area. And they're shocked to find in such a small area that there's 200 sexual predators registered. That is unbelievable. I'm quite sure that if you did it for any area, even in England, you'd probably be surprised who was on that list. I know there's people on the list for you know, weighing in public or indecent exposure by being drunk and, you know, getting your boobs out or something like that. There are cases where people like that are put on the sex offenders register, which I think it's a bit of a, you know, can you put them in the same category as someone that's raping a 7-month-old baby and murdering them? I don't think you can. But the law says they're the same, unfortunately. So when they take Holly's body back to be forensically examined, they tape a body and they also do fingernail clippings. Now, when they analyse the taping, they find green fibres which are consistent with green fibres that are found in bath mats. That's the first clue. And luckily, there's DNA under Holly's fingernails, which to me suggests she tried to fight back. In the gym bag with Holly's head and arms, there was a bloody mop, like a mop head, and a dumbbell. These details were made public. Now, a woman called Vicky Baldick used to be married to a man called Michael Briere. She left him in 96 and divorced him in 97. But the green fibre information made her think of Michael Briere because he was obsessed with the colour green. Apparently, she said everything in the house was green. Furniture, bath mats, everything. You name it, it was green. She also recognised the gym bags. So during the investigation, 2,500 homes were searched and DNA was collected. Now, the police gave the men who gave DNA a waiver to sign, which said as long as your DNA is not a match, your DNA will be destroyed. It won't be held on any record, on any database. 99% of men gave DNA. There were 468 people of interest. That's a lot. So the police needed to narrow it down, and to do this they created a profile of the killer, and they narrowed that down to 19, which then eventually got narrowed down to 3. These 3 all refused to give DNA. So there was Bleach Man, who, when they went to his house, it just stunk of strong bleach. Now, if you want to get rid of DNA, bleach is the thing to use. It's so corrosive for DNA. Another man was called Workshop Man, and he went to his house and he had a workshop, and the police found all kinds of tools which could be used to dismember a body. And then on May 21st, the police arrived at Michael Brier's house. Now, the police officers would go around just to, you know, check things out, do a little interview. They note that there's 2 green bath mats in the bathroom. There's cleanser, and there's an empty mop bucket without a mop. And he has dumbbells by the bed. The police ask him, "How do you clean your floors?" He immediately says, "Not with a mop." Well, Michael Brier, they didn't ask what you didn't do, they asked what you did do. Peter Hyatt, he's a statement analyst. He's brilliant, he's on YouTube. He always says, if you offer a negative, which is something like, "Oh, well, what do you do on Tuesday?" "Well, I never went to the casino." If you do that, that makes investigators' ears prick up, because it's like, why are you saying that when I'm talking about this? You're trying to create distance somehow. But in fact, you're not. You're just making yourself look so guilty. Again, I'm not an expert in the least of statement analysis, but he kind of says along them lines. So again, the police ask him there and then, "Will you give a DNA sample?" And he says no, which is his right. He doesn't have to give his DNA at all. But the police kind of do look sideways when you say no. His reason for saying no was he doesn't like Big Brother. Even though this waiver was in place, he said he doesn't trust any of that, which is fair enough. So then a little bit of time goes by, and police again go to Michael Brier's house. There's no answer, but they found Michael Brier sneaking out the back, and they catch him, and he says, "Oh, I was just going for a walk." And the police are like, "Right, okay, can we come in and talk to you?" And he says, yeah, come in and talk to me. So when they first go in, on the table there's a brand new shower curtain, still in a trapper. The bath mats are now beige, and there's children's toys, even though there's no children. Again, it makes me think, was he planning on going to get another kid? Now, even though he's refusing to do DNA and all that, he does say he'll go down to the station and answer some questions. the police bring up what colour were his old bath mats before they were beige, and he says, oh, they were black. The police are like, oh my god, we know they were green. So just a bit of information about Michael Briere. At the time, he was 35 years old. He weighed 90 kilos. He worked at a pharmaceutical company as a computer programmer, and he was described as a quiet man. He was originally from the Rosemont area of Montreal. His mother was an alcoholic. His dad didn't want him, played no part in his upbringing. Now his ex-wife Vicky claims that as a child he was abused every single which way a child can be abused, and that she doesn't want to go into the details because it's horrific. It's said that he had really low self-esteem. He wanted to be an actor, but he lacked he was not my words, but he was described as someone who is quite ugly, and this forced him to undergo plastic surgery, which I don't think really helped. But back then, plastic surgeons, they weren't the best. They're better now, but they're still not great. So at the time, Michael Briere is living in Montreal. He speaks French. He goes by the name Michel Briere, which is obviously the French version. And he hates it. He hates who he is. He wants to move somewhere else. He wants to become someone else. So he moves to Toronto. He teaches himself English, which I think is amazing. And he changes his name from Michel Briere to Michael Briere. He still wants to pursue acting, so he enrolls in a theatre school, and it's here that he meets Vicky and they start dating. Within the first 12 months he proposes and they get married in Las Vegas. Now she says at first it was a great relationship, it was really, really good, but then the jobs started to clash. They were like ships passing in the night, which a lot of relationships go through that with jobs and stuff. And he started to become quite obsessed with playing computer games. He'd phone in sick at work so he could stay playing on his video games. He'd spend 40 hours plus playing on video games, which I think is just mental. He became very reclusive, very isolated. Then Vicky had just had enough. By 1996 she packed the bags and she left, and in 1997 she got a divorce. Now it's been suggested that it's after she left that he started watching child porn. But I mean, there's no evidence to say this, but I think he was watching child porn way before she left. So at this stage in the investigation, the police still have no evidence to charge him, no DNA, no nothing. So they just put a surveillance team on him, hoping that he will drop something with DNA and they can get it tested. Now one day he's walking to work and he's drinking a Pepsi can, and he finishes it and he puts it in the bin, and the police then go and they're like, yes, we've got him. But in the bin there was 2 identical Pepsi cans, so both were collected and both were sent off to the lab. It came back that one of them was a match for the killer, but they couldn't say which was which, so they had to carry on watching them. So a few more weeks go by and he is with his new girlfriend, which is weird. at a fast food restaurant, and he's drinking a drink through a straw. When they're leaving, he discards the straw. Surveillance team rush in, get it, bag it, send it off to be tested. Comes back as a match. On the 20th of June at 5:40 a.m, Pierre is walking to work, and the two detectives which have been on the case from day dot are Como and Perry, and they arrest him and they charge him. Getting back to the station, asking them loads of questions, he's ignoring them. Until they mention Holly and Holly's legs, and he says, "You'll never find her legs." He put them in the trash, and I believe the trash was going to Minnesota. So over the next 3 hours, he confesses to everything. It's like he was waiting for the opportunity to talk, and he just wouldn't shut up. I can't believe the trauma what these detectives must have faced, being in that room, hearing him talk the way he talks. He confesses to kidnapping Holly, raping Holly, murdering Holly and dismembering Holly. He says that day he had been drinking and he'd been watching child porn, and he was really fed up of watching, he really wanted to do it. So he made the decision that he was going to go on the street and grab a kid and bring them back and rape them. Unfortunately, the child he seen was Holly. But if it weren't Holly, it would have been someone else, because he made that decision. So he grabs her, takes her back, rapes her, strangles her. Then he comes round and he doesn't know what to do. So he goes to his fridge and pulls out all the shelves, and he puts Holly's body inside the fridge, and then he goes outside for some fresh air. When he comes back, he grabs the gym bags, and then he realises that she's too big to fit. So then he decides he needs to dismember her. Over the next few days, he started to get rid of all the other evidence, bath mats, stuff like that. On his mattress, they found Holly's blood. And it is a 1 in 68 billion margin of error. So you can't get much better than that. It must have been a lot of blood with a good chunk of DNA to get such a powerful match back then. These days you don't need that much. You don't need that much DNA to get a match. It's so sensitive, the equipment they've got these days. Now, he says Holly was his only victim, which I don't believe. He then blamed the internet. He said it was the internet's fault because they provide 24/7 child porn, unlimited, and it's even worse now. So he's charged and sentenced to life, which is like 25 years. Now Holly's mum, Maria, she tried to change the law. She tried to implement something called Holly's Law, which would change the laws around child pornography and the internet. It didn't come to pass, which doesn't surprise me. The legal system are run by, just let's say it's being infiltrated. I'll leave it there. But all the lobbying did help create a national sex offenders register. I think this story is so important, and I'll tell you why. Michael Briere is eligible for day release in 2025. He's eligible for parole in 2028. I just want to read to you what he said in court when he was getting sentenced. The crime I am guilty of is simply the worst crime a person can commit. What I did was absolutely wrong. It was done out of selfishness. It was the act of coward. I accept the sentence which you are about to give me. No one who has been in front of you has been more deserving of such a sentence. Listen to this. I stand by my words when I told the police a man who commits this type of crime needs to be put away. You put him away for good. He's basically saying, you can't fix us. You either kill us or put us away for life, but we are not safe to be in normal society. He then goes on to say, I take no pride in what I have done. The truth is, I am ashamed beyond belief. I regret everything. I am really sorry. I really wish I could do everything. And yet, the parole board will probably happily release him back onto the streets. And the internet and the world is so much more dark than what it was back then. I want to end this talking about Holly. Every year, Holly's last steps are retraced by little kids, and they're given paper butterflies because Holly loved butterflies, and they write little messages. And they all walk the same route she took. And they pin these little paper butterflies onto this like tree thing. In one of the documentaries, Holly's mum, she's got like a memory box of all the little keepsakes that Holly made, the little Mother's Day cards and just everything that Holly produced all fits in this little box. It's sad because It's as if Maria is grieving all the memories she will never have with Holly. She feels so guilty for letting her go that day. James, her older brother, also regrets not going with her that day. He was going to, but then he wanted to do something else and he just thought, oh, she'll be okay. Do you know what? Holly should have been okay to walk a little friend home and back. But to say in that little area there was 200 predators, plus this freak who weren't even on the sex offenders register. It's scary, you know, to think that right now, wherever you are, around you, in your area, there'll be people drinking and drugging, watching child porn. I know I've used that term about 3 times, and I hate it, because it's not child pornography. It's the video evidence of a child being sexually molested and raped. That's what it is. In some instances, it's sadistic torture of a little child that these bastards are getting their kicks from. And it's never enough to just watch. This is my thing about child sex dolls. It's not enough. It might stimulate you for a little bit, but then you need something harder and more sadistic, more realistic, and then you get a child sex doll, and then that's not enough. You want the real thing. I don't know what the solution is. I really don't. All I know is this baby girl, she should be a grown woman now. She might have gone on to be in a rock group, a pop star. Certainly now with like social media and, you know, all the talent shows, the X Factors, America's Got Talent, all them, you know, oh, she might have went down a completely different path. She might have went down, you know, sports or art. She might have just wanted to be a mum, you know. And the world's missing out on her. Bear in mind, he could be walking the streets in 2.5 years. And I don't know why. Anyway, thanks for listening, and I'll see you all thanks for listening, and I'll see you all in my next one. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye.